My guest this week is Professor Steve Brusatte, who grew up studying in America before moving over to work at Edinburgh University as a professor of paleontology and evolution. He's a best-selling author of the popular science book, The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, and has written an accompanying children's version called The Age of the Dinosaurs. He's also been an advisor for Walking with the Dinosaurs and is an advisor on the upcoming Jurassic World film. Steve, welcome to STEM with Mr. N.
Stuart, thanks for having me. Thanks for the nice introduction.
You're very welcome, and it's a pleasure to have you on the channel. So let's get right into it. What does the day-to-day life of a professor of paleontology actually involve?
So I am a professor here in Edinburgh, and that means I work at the University of Edinburgh. I work in the what we call the Grant Institute, which is the geology center, which is in the King's Buildings campus. It's in the south part of the city of Edinburgh. And there's a lot of different components of my job, and every day is quite different. So there are times that I'm teaching. I teach a lot of courses. I teach undergraduate courses in geology and in paleontology. I teach courses for older students, for master's students as well. And I also run a master's course. We have a one-year program where students can come and study paleontology specifically and do a research project and take a few advanced courses. And I run that program. I also have many PhD students that work with me. That's like the next level up. There's all these different levels of education. And so being a PhD student is really kind of like having an entry-level job. You get paid for it, and you work with a supervisor, who's me in this case, and you work in a lab. So I have a lab, I run that lab, and I have many students working with me. And then in addition, I do other things at the university. I have different roles, just helping with the development of courses and with the way the university runs. And then I do a lot of outreach, writing, science communication. I love writing books. I love giving lectures to the public, to kids, really to anybody who's outside of the university setting. I love teaching in the university, but I really love bringing my research out of the university. And then during those lucky times of the year, I do get to leave my office and go out into the world, into the field, to go out and search for dinosaurs and other fossils. So I go to places like New Mexico in the US. I go to places closer, like the Isle of Skye here in Scotland, and a variety of places in Europe and really around the world. It really varies, but we're always going out as most of the time that we can find to do it. You know, with COVID, it's changed that, and it's been a few years since I've been out, but we're always wanting to go out and discover new fossils, because a big part of paleontology, not the only part of paleontology, but a big part of paleontology is finding new fossils. And there are still a lot of fossils that are out there waiting to be found.
That's amazing, the sort of range that's involved in your day-to-day. So obviously no day sounds like it's the same as any other day. But
No, every day is different, which is great. It's a nice thing about the job, I have to say, because you never really get too stuck in a routine. There's always something new, something different, a new challenge, a new task to do, a new student to work with, a new class to teach, and then that makes it a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it'll keep it exciting as well, and the use of the PhD students as well. So for people who have been following the channel, or people that are new to it, I did a video on fossils a while back, and Steve was very kind to lend one of his PhD students, Paige DePolo, to the fossils video. So I'll put a link in the description so you can check that out. But the work that the PhD students with you is incredible, based on what Paige said. Are they out in the field as well, researching, or is it just professors like yourself that get to do that?
No, it's students that get to go out and look for fossils too. And actually, when we go out in the field, most of the time it's the students that find the best fossils. It's not me. You know, I have the most training, but it doesn't mean I have the best eye for fossils. Or a lot of fossil collecting does come down to chance and to opportunity, and even to a little bit of luck. And I don't always have the best luck. It varies, but almost every time we go out, say to the Isle of Skye, it's not me who's finding the best fossils. It is one of my students. And that really goes to show that paleontology is different from a lot of other sciences. You don't need to be a professor to find a fossil. You don't need a PhD to go out and find a dinosaur bone and dig it up. And in fact, a lot of the greatest discoveries are not only made by young students, but many are actually made by farmers, by construction workers, by hikers, sometimes even young kids that are out walking with their parents. Anybody can find a fossil. And that's just not really the case with a lot of other sciences. I mean, it's very hard to be like an amateur nuclear physicist or something like that. So to me, that's one of the wonderful things about paleontology. And when I became interested in dinosaurs and fossils, I was about 14 or 15 years old growing up in America. One of the things that I started to do, especially after I got my driver's license, was just to go out and look for fossils. And there were no dinosaur fossils around where I grew up, but there were many other types of fossils. In fact, fossils that were even older than the dinosaurs, a lot of fern leaves and corals and shells and so on. And being able to just go out and find my own fossils was exhilarating. And there's something that is just incredible about going out, finding a fossil. You are the first person that has ever seen that fossil. And this is something that is millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of years old. It is a clue from a world that is long gone, a world long before humans, and you're the first one to see it. And to me, that is just an amazing thing, and that feeling never gets old.
I wish I had managed to experience that feeling so far, but unfortunately in my life, I've not yet discovered a fossil, because I always had the impression growing up that paleontologists and anyone hunting for fossils would be out in the desert, scrabbling among the rock. But you've mentioned there, not only New Mexico, where I imagine there would be quite a bit of desert and scrabbling in the rock, but you've also said that you've been to Skye and found fossils there. So what's the sort of range of places where you have discovered fossils? And if I could add a wee bit onto the end of that question as well, it's about how can children get involved in being amateur fossil hunters? Have you got advice about how they can spot fossils when they're out and about?
Well, I'll start with the last part of the question first. There's no fancy tools or gadgets or technology that we use to find fossils. We don't have a radar gun that we point into the rock to see what's inside of the rock. There's nothing like that. The only way to really find fossils is to go out and look. You look at the rocks because you find fossils inside of rocks. Fossils are bones, teeth, shells, leaves, anything that used to be part of an animal or a plant, or like say a footprint that an animal left behind. It's anything like that that is turned to stone and been preserved as stone. So you find fossils inside of rocks. And the only way to do it is to look at the rocks. You have to look carefully. You have to look for anything that looks a bit different, a different color, a different texture, a different shape. And really what that means is it takes luck, it takes patience, and it does take some experience. You need to take the time to get to know what the rocks look like and what is kind of a normal rock and what a fossil inside a rock might look like, what color it might be, and those kind of things. So what that really means, though, is that anybody can find fossils, and young kids can find fossils. Young kids often find amazing fossils. There's places all around Edinburgh, whether it's Wardy Bay here in the city, whether it's down in the Pentland Hills south of the city, whether it's the coast, East Lothian coast out by Barnes Nest, by the lighthouse, whether it's across the bridge in Fife, around Kinghorn. All of these places have lots of fossils, and you can go and you can walk there and you can look. And that is my advice. Ask your parents to go out and take a look, and look at the internet, try to find some pictures online, try to find some information, print that out, take it with you, and that will help you identify fossils. That's how I got started. There was nothing fancier than that. But the first part of that question, you're absolutely right as far as what a lot of people think about fossils. What I just said maybe is something a lot of people don't realize, because when you see paleontology shows on television, let's say, there usually is this stereotype of explorers going out into the desert, hundreds of miles from civilization. It's hot, it's dry, it's dusty, and they're brushing the sand off of the bones, and this whole skeleton comes into view. You can find fossils in deserts, and we do in New Mexico, but in reality, you can find fossils anywhere where there are rocks of the right age and the right type. So for instance, for dinosaurs, if you want to find a dinosaur fossil, you have to go somewhere where there were rocks that were formed in the Triassic, Jurassic, or Cretaceous periods, because that's when dinosaurs lived, and rocks that were formed on land. So rivers, lakes, beaches, lagoons, the kind of places dinosaurs would live, where they might live and where maybe if one of them died, they could get buried by sand or mud and turned into rock. Anywhere where there are the right kind of rocks, you could possibly find a dinosaur. So that means, for instance, the Isle of Skye. It's not a desert. It's the farthest thing from a desert you can imagine. But there are rocks that were formed in the Jurassic period on the beaches, in the lagoons, and those rocks are exposed on the cliffs and along the modern day beaches of a lot of Skye. And those rocks have fossils in them. And there are so many places around the world that just do not fit that stereotype. So keep an open mind. That is the most important thing. Just because you don't live near a desert, it doesn't mean that you're not able to find fossils.
That was one of the most interesting things that I found a few years ago when I had the privilege of hearing you speak at the Glasgow Science Centre, was finding fossils on Skye. And I mean, as an adult, I'd grown up my entire life with this perception of the dirt in the desert. And to find out that you could find them on Skye, it blew me away. So I'm glad we're getting a chance to tell children and young people now early that these notions that they might have of a paleontologist are not exactly what paleontology involves. So from reading The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, I learned that you have described various new dinosaurs. Have you got a most exciting discovery of yours, whether it's a new dinosaur or just a fossil you discovered that just kind of blew you away in a professional capacity?
Well, I have been very fortunate to work with so many amazing friends, colleagues, mentors, and now my students, in so many places around the world, and we've discovered a lot of fossils together. And I've worked with many teams that have found new fossils or teams that have described new dinosaurs. Of all of the different discoveries, I mean, one that I would highlight is one that we made on the Isle of Skye. When we were on Skye about 5 years ago, I was there with my students, and I was there with Tom Challens, who's a friend and colleague of mine. He's a paleontologist at the University of Edinburgh as well. And Tom usually he studies fossil fish. But so we help each other out. We try to find dinosaurs together. We try to find fish together. So we went out to Skye on that trip. We went to a place where a geologist friend of ours had found a tiny little bone, this little jawbone. It was of a crocodile, a Jurassic aged crocodile. And that got us excited. And we hoped maybe we'd find a skeleton of a crocodile. And wouldn't that be amazing? And we spent all day at this place and we didn't find anything. And then we started walking back to our vehicles late in the afternoon, early in the evening, and we started to see these enormous holes on the rock platform. This was right near the water, near the beach. And each of these holes was about the size of a car tire, and they were tidal pools. They were filled with seaweed and hermit crabs and barnacles and so on. But, it dawned on Tom and me that there was something kind of different about these holes. There were over 100 of them. And they seemed to form patterns, like a bit of a left-right zigzagging pattern. And you often had two together, like a big horseshoe, a big kind of shoe-shaped one, let's say, and then this tiny little crescent-shaped one in front. And so then we started to see that some of these holes had little bits sticking out from the front that really looked like fingers or toes. And we realized that these were fossils. These were fossil footprints and handprints that were left by a dinosaur. And there's really only one type of dinosaur. In fact, only one type of animal that's ever lived on land in the history of the earth that was so big that it left a car tire sized hole anytime its hand or foot hit the ground. And these are those big long-necked plant-eating dinosaurs like Brontosaurus and Diplodocus. And so we found their footprints 170 million years ago. They were making those footprints right here in Scotland. And that was just such a fun discovery.
It's amazing finding something like that on your own doorstep, and something that when you and Tom were out looking for the fossils, you probably walked by and hadn't registered, like you were saying, you were heading back at the end of the day. Amazing to just stumble upon such a discovery.
It was so unexpected, and that's what made that one really rewarding, because we had been to lots of places on Skye, and many other geologists had been to that place. And just none of us had really recognized before that these holes were footprints and handprints. You need to see the possibilities. Unless you have an open mind, you might not realize something. So if we didn't know that these were Jurassic Age rocks and they were formed during the time of the dinosaurs and they were formed in an ancient lagoon, so the type of place dinosaurs lived, we probably would have never even thought that these tidal pools may have been filled in dinosaur footprints. So that the lesson there is just keep an open mind. And that's the most important lesson for any young scientist, any scientist at all.
So we had a great discussion there about your day-to-day role in discovering dinosaur fossils and how children can do it. But I'm interested, how did you get involved in STEM as a young person? And then what led you into paleontology when you were around 14, 15?
When I was particularly young, like when I was in preschool and kindergarten and primary school, I did not have any real interest in science. It was my least favorite course in school, I have to admit. And it's not because I had bad teachers or anything like that. It just didn't quite capture my interest for whatever reason at that age. But my youngest brother, Chris, loved dinosaurs. And he was obsessed with dinosaurs. His bedroom was a dinosaur museum. I mean, he had every Jurassic Park toy. He had hundreds of dinosaur books. And so being surrounded by that over time, I think it just kind of eventually captured my interest too. And so when I was a teenager then, around the time I started high school back home, that's when I properly became obsessed with dinosaurs myself. And what really interested me about dinosaurs wasn't just that some of them were really big or that they were really old, but it was that by studying these animals that lived so long ago, we could come to better understand how the Earth has changed over time and how evolution works, how evolution makes new species. And that is what really captured me. So then I knew that I wanted to do this as a career, and that meant going to university. I studied for a geology degree, so I got a degree in basically the science of the earth and the science of rocks and earthquakes and volcanoes. Very important for paleontologists because the fossils are found inside of rocks. And then I went on, I did a master's degree and did a PhD degree. It takes many years to get all of these degrees, but each one you're getting trained. You're learning new techniques, new tools, new ways of thinking. It's all part of the training process. Like so many jobs, you need to have quite a bit of training before you're able to completely go off on your own.
So when you started getting interested in paleontology and pursuing that forward, did you have any heroes in the field that you looked up to or fossil hunters that you aspired to be like?
Absolutely. I had many mentors that helped me along the way. Any scientist is never going to just work alone. They always have people that train them, that educate them, and that work alongside them. I had a wonderful teacher in high school, Mr. Jacob Check. He's still a dear family friend of ours. He taught me how to find fossils, how to actually go out and look for fossils myself. And when I was in high school, during the summers, we would go in my car or his car, we'd go out, we'd look for fossils. That was incredible. And then at university, I worked with a paleontologist named Paul Serino, who's a very famous dinosaur hunter. He's the first person who took me out to actually dig up dinosaurs. And he gave me some dinosaur bones that he found in Africa to study. And he said, here they are, measure them, photograph them, describe them, compare them to other dinosaurs, tell me what this is. And we figured out together that it was a new species, and that led to my career really in dinosaurs. And I've had great mentors since then. I had a guy named Mike Benton in Bristol, my master supervisor. He taught me a lot about how to use mathematics and statistics to study evolution. And then Mark Norell was my PhD supervisor in New York, and he did all kinds of amazing things, open all kinds of doors for me. So I really try to pay that forward with my students and be a good mentor.
And I know you need to go soon, so we'll make this the last question because I've been hanging on hoping to ask about this, so I'm going to do it now.
I think I know what it's going to be.
So I mean, as a child, I was probably a lot like your brother Chris, loved the Jurassic Park films, really into dinosaurs. So how amazing is it for you now that you got into dinosaurs and are advising on one of these films?
Well, first, I just say my apologies that I do have to go so quickly. It's just we have our lab meetings now. We have weekly lab meetings, so I'm going to be seeing all my students in a few minutes. Of course, it's all digital now because of COVID, but part of being a good mentor is, making the time for the students. So, but this is a great question to end on. I mean, it's to work with Jurassic World is, it's surreal. Really, it's probably the best word to use. It's obviously it's fun, it's very rewarding, and it's kind of crazy to think about it because growing up, with my brother, he was such a Jurassic Park fan, and then I was too. Once I became interested in dinosaurs, I've seen all the films so many times, and so when the director of the Jurassic World series, Colin Trevorrow, he just happened to read my book. He read The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, the book you have behind you there. He picked it up, I don't know, in an airport, at a bookshop. He read it. I guess he liked it. He got in touch. He said, "Hey, I'm making another film in the series. I'd like some help in making the dinosaurs realistic." When he sent that email, I thought it was a joke, to be honest. I thought it was somebody playing a prank on me. So I needed to look into it. And then it turned out that, oh my goodness, this really is him. And so we set up a meeting. He came to Edinburgh for the Fringe. With his family, and so we had a meeting then, and we talked dinosaurs for a couple of hours, and we got on really well. It was such a fun conversation, and he asked me then, "Do you want to help me with the films formally? Can I bring you on as a consultant?" And I said, "Oh my God, absolutely!" So for the last few years, I've just been doing my part, which basically has been I've been on call to work with him and with the character designers as they design the dinosaurs. They come up with new characters, new computer graphics. We want to make those dinosaurs accurate. At the same time, they are movie characters, so they're not going to be perfect. They're not going to be exactly like the dinosaurs were in real life, but part of my job is finding that right balance. And I've just been on duty to answer any questions that these guys have about dinosaurs. And one of the real highlights was visiting the set down in Pinewood Studios in London last year. And I won't say much about it yet because the film still has to come out, but I'll just say that I saw some amazing scenes being filmed, and I'm so excited about the next film, which will be coming out summer of 2022.
What an amazing coincidence that he grabbed your book, and it's given me my wee bit of sort of geek excitement as well to be connected with somebody involved in these films. Steve, I know you need to go now. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been a fascinating chat, and I'm sure everybody listening will have learned something new about it. And make sure and check out Steve's books, The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs for adults, brilliant popular science book, and The Age of Dinosaurs, a great dinosaur book for children.
And I'll say one more thing, and that's to any of you watching, if you're at all interested, whether it's dinosaurs, paleontology, geology, earth science, come to the University of Edinburgh and study with us. We have a great degree, we have a great course, and any of you that are interested in any of those aspects of science would love to study with us.